All right. So, on to the next video. We're going to be starting Pathway 4 in Unit 1. So it's Android Basics in Kotlin. Unit 1, Kotlin Basics. Pathway 4, add a button to an app. Learn how to use classes, objects, and conditionals to create an interactive app for your users. Explore. Classes and object instances in Kotlin. Create a Kotlin program that generates random numbers to simulate rolling a dice. Let's take the code lab. All right, so before you begin, in this code lab, or for the code labs in this pathway, you'll be building a dice roller app. Nice. Android app, when the user rolls a dice, a random result will be generated. This result will take into account the number of sides of the dice. For example, only values from 1 to 6 can be rolled from a 6-sided dice. This is what the final app will look like. Cool. Image of the dice, roll button. When you click roll, I'm guessing it changes the image. To help focus on the new programming concept for this app, you will use the browser-based Kotlin programming tool to create core app functionality. The program will output your results to the console. Later, you will implement the user interface in the Android Studio. In this first code lab, you will create a Kotlin program that simulates rolling a dice and outputs a random number, just like the dice would. Prereqs are how to open and run the Android code editor in the browser, create and run a Kotlin program that uses variables and functions and prints a result to the console, format the numbers within the text using a string with the notation. So I think that's called template notation. We'll learn how to programmatically generate random numbers to simulate dice rolls, how to structure code by creating a dice class with a variable and a method, how to create the object instance of a class, all right, and how to modify its variables and call its methods. We're going to build a Kotlin program in the browser-based Kotlin programming tool that can perform a random dice roll. What you'll need, a computer with internet connection. So let's go ahead and open up the Kotlin playground of where we're going to do this for this section. So we're just going to go back and forth between the tutorial and the playground. I'm thinking doing this. Okay. Roll random numbers. Games often have random elements to them. You can earn random prizes or advance a random number of steps on the game board in your everyday life. You can use random numbers and letters to generate safer passwords. Instead of rolling actual dice, you can write a program that simulates rolling dice for you. Each time you roll the dice, the outcome can be any number with the range of possible values. Fortunately, you don't have to build your own random number generator for such a program. Most programming languages, including Kotlin, have a built-in way for you to generate random numbers. In this task, you will use Kotlin code to generate a random number. All right, set up your starter code to look like this. So we'll just take the hello world out of there. Put another couple spaces in our main to set up our starter code. All right. Use the random function. To roll a dice, you need a way to represent all of the valid dice roll values. For a regular 6-sided dice, the acceptable dice rolls are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Previously, you learned that there are types of data like int for an integer number and string for text. Int range is another data type, and it represents the range of integer numbers from a starting point to an endpoint. Int range is a suitable data type for representing the possible values of a dice roll that it can produce. Inside your main function, define a variable as a val called dice range. Assign it to int range from 1 to 6, representing the range of integer numbers that a 6-sided dice can roll. So we're going to make a val dice range and set it equal to 1 until 6. I'm guessing are the 2 dots. So val dice range equals 1 dot dot 6. How it was? Yeah. Okay. And that is assign it to an int type or int range. I mean, it doesn't say to do it of type int range. I guess it just knows it, but I'm not going to put it if it already knows it. So we'll just do it like they say. Val dice range is 1 to 6. Okay. You can tell that 1 dot dot 6 is a Kotlin range because it has a start number, 2 dots, followed by an ending number. Other examples of int ranges are 2 to 5 for numbers 2 through 5, 100 to 200 for numbers 100 through 200. Tip, notice that it does not say int range in the definition there. That's what I was just talking about. In the same way that you do not have to specify int or string when creating a variable for an integer or a string, most of the time the system can figure out what data type you intend most of the time. Sometimes I guess we're going to have to say of type whatever. For example, yeah, system interprets this val dice range equals 1 to 6 as this val dice range of type int range equals 1 to 6. All right. Similar to how calling println tells the system to print the given text, you can use a function called random to generate and return a random number for you for a given range. As before, you can store the result in a variable. Inside main, define a variable as val called random number. Okay. Make random number have the value of the result of calling random on the dice range as shown below. Val random number equals dice range dot random. All right. Oh. All right. Notice that you are calling random on dice range. So you're calling random on dice range by using this notation. Using a period or a dot between the variable and the function call, you can read this as generating a random number from dice range. The result is then stored in random number variable. To see your randomly generated number, use the string formatting notation, also called a string template, $, in curly braces random number, to print it out as shown below. Println random number, random number. Okay. Use that notation inside curly brackets. Just got curiosity. Random number is 3. Random number is 2. I get a 6. Random number is 4. I'm betting $10 it's a 6. Nah, I lost $10. 4, 6. There we go. Eventually I would have gotten $10 after I lost about 70. All right. Your finished code should look like this. And it looks like that. Run your code several times. Each time you should see the output with a different number. Okay. Tip about ranges. Ranges can be between any integers. The following are valid ranges: 3 to 46, 0 to 270, -6 to +6, -10 to -4. You can call functions directly on ranges. For example, 1 to 6 dot random. Basically what we just did. Create a dice class. When you roll your dice, they are real objects in your hand. While the code you just wrote works perfectly fine, it's hard to imagine that it's about an actual dice. Organizing a program to be more like things it represents makes it easier to understand. So it would be cool to have a programmatic programmatic dice that you can roll. All dice work essentially the same. They have the same properties, such as slides. They have the same behavior, such as that they can be rolled. In Kotlin, you can create a programmatic blueprint of a dice that says dice have sides and can roll a random number. This blueprint is called a class. From the class, you can create an actual dice object instances. For example, you can create a 12-sided dice or a 4-sided dice. Tip: a class is similar to how an architect's blueprint plans are not the house. They are instructions of how to build the house. The house is the actual thing, or object instance, created according to the blueprint. Note: organizing everything about the dice into a class is called encapsulation. Encapsulation is a big fancy word, but all it means is that you can enclose functionality that is logically related into a single place. Define a dice class. In the following steps, you will define a new class called dice to represent a rollable dice. To finish or to start afresh, clear out the code in the main function, so you'll end up with the code as shown. All right. Below the main function, add a blank line and then add code to create the dice class as shown. All right, so let's do that. It wants us to get rid of everything we just wrote. And then it wants me to create a class. Dice. Belly braces. And I think we're gonna have one of these guys too. Let's see. Nope. We're not gonna have one of these guys. Alright, so we've got our main and we've got our class dice. Similar to using the fun keyword in Kotlin to create a new function, use the class keyword to create a new class. You can choose any name for the class, but it is helpful if the name indicates what the class represents. By convention, the class name is written in upper camel case, also called Pascal casing. For example, car, parking meter, customer record. So when you're writing a class, the first letter of the first word is uppercase, and then every first letter of every first word after that is also uppercase. Inside the class definition, you can specify one or more properties for the class using variables. Real dice can have a number of sides, a color, or a weight. In this task, you'll focus on the number of sides of the dice. Inside the dice class, add a var called sides for the number of sides that your dice will have. Set sides to 6. That's it. Now you have a very simple class representing dice. Create an instance of the dice class. With this dice class, you have a blueprint of what dice is. To have an actual dice in your program, you need to create a dice object instance. And if you have 3 dice, you would create 3 object instances. My first dice, my second dice, my third dice class. So the dice class is just a blueprint, and then we need to create the actual individual objects. To create an object instance of dice in the main function, create a val called myFirstDice. All right, in the main function, val myFirstDice, and initialize it as an instance of dice. Okay. Notice parentheses after the class name, which denote that you are creating a new object instance from the class. So val myFirstDice in the main function. Class new instance of dice. Are we going to do 3 dice? Let's pretend we're going to do 3. Okay. Now that you have my first dice object, a thing made from a blueprint, you can access its properties. The only property of dice right now is its size. You can access a property using dot notation. So to access the sides of property, so access the sides property of my first dice, you can call my first dice dot sides, which is pronounced my first dice dot sides. Below the declaration of my first dice, add a print line statement to output the number of sides of my first dice. Okay. So 6 prints out 6. All right, so it's accessing sides through the print line of my first dice. Okay. You have used the dot notation earlier when calling dice range.random. Generalized, you can think of the dot notation as saying on something dot perform some action, such as here with my first dice. So on my first dice dot perform some action, get the sides. On this instance, get the sides property. Yep, your code should look like this. And it does. I just have the other dice instances just in case it wants us to add them. Run your program and it should output the number of sides. And it did. You now have a dice class and an actual dice. My first dice with 6 sides. Let's make the dice roll. Make the dice roll. You previously used a function to perform the action of printing cake layers. Rolling the dice is also an action that can be implemented as a function. And since all dice can be rolled, you can add a function for it inside the dice class. A function that is defined inside a class is called a method. In the dice class, below the sides variable, insert a blank line and then create a new function for rolling the dice. Start with the Kotlin keyword fun, followed by the name of the function, followed by parentheses, followed by an opening curly braces. You can leave a blank line in between the curly braces to make room for more code. Okay, and your class should look like this. Fun roll. All right, so we're going to add the fun roll to the dice class. Okay. All right. So I don't know. It's going to have us do these things, so I'll just delete that for now. All right. We've got our function roll. You can name this method anything you want, but it is helpful to give it a name that indicates what action it performs. The naming convention for functions and methods is to start with a lowercase letter, use camel case, and then start with an action verb if possible. When you roll a 6-sided dice, it produces a random number between 1 and 6. Inside the roll method, create a val random number, assign random number in the 1 to 6 range, and use the dot notation to call random on the range. So we're going to create this val number, random number, 1 to 6, dot random. Okay. So it's going to give me a random number between 1 and 6. And it's going to store it in the val random number in the roll class. So val random number equals 1, 6, and we're going to call random on that range. And that's going to be the val random number is of type int range, but I don't need to specify of type and range because they can figure that out. And I'm going to call random on this, generate the random number. Okay. After generating the random number, print it to the console. Your finished roll method should look like this. Random number. Okay, so first it should print out 6 for the number of sides. Oh, I never called it. So that's not going to print out anything unless I call it. Let's see what it says. To actually roll my first dice. Oh, okay. We got to roll the actual object, not the blueprint. My first dice dot roll. Okay. Now it should work. Yep. So it prints out the number of sides, and then it does the roll, and it prints out the random number generated by the roll. So if I hit this again, it should change. It does. All right, cool. Your completed code should look like this. And it does. Run your code. You should see the result of the random dice below the number of the sides. Run your code several times. Notice that the number of sides stays the same, but the dice roll value changes. Congratulations, you have defined a dice class with a size variable and a roll function. In the main function, you created a new dice object instance, and then you called the roll method on it to produce a random number. Return your dice roll value. You are currently printing out the value of the random number in your roll function, and that works great. But sometimes it is more useful to return the result of a function to whatever called the function. For example, you could assign the roll method to a variable and then move a player by that amount. Let's see how that's done. The main, modify the line that says my first dice roll, create a val called dice roll, set it equal to the value returned by the roll method. All right, so value dice roll equals my first dice roll. This doesn't do anything yet because roll doesn't return anything. Okay. Well, dice roll. Okay. So we're going to cut this. Val dice roll equals. All right. And then print line random number. Instead of print line random number, we're going to return the number. Okay. Mismatched. Inferred type is int, but unit was expected. Where? Okay, let's read further. This doesn't do anything yet because roll doesn't return anything yet. In order for this code to work as intended, roll has to do something, return something. In a previous code lab, you learned you need to specify a data type. That's why. Oh, when you return something. Okay, that's what's going on. So let's see if it works. Yep, that works. And I just didn't print it out, but it saved this value in dice roll. Okay, run this code, you'll see an error. Okay, I didn't see the error because I changed that already. Yep. See, I had changed the print line to return random number instead of print random number. All right, in the main, remove the print statement for the sides of the dice. Add a statement to print out the value of sides and dice roll. In an informative sentence, your finished main function should look similar to the code below. Your blank-sided dice, your six-sided dice, rolled a whatever it rolled. Okay. So let's make that. Your hmm, oh, I didn't put it in. I didn't put it in brackets. This one worked even though I didn't put it in brackets. Let's see if that helps. Yep. Here's your code so far. Yeah, that looks right. Change the number of sides. Not all dice have six sides. Dice come in all shapes and sizes. 4 sides, 8 sides, up to 120 sides for some dice, really. In your dice class, in your roll method, change the hard-coded 1 to 6 to, to use sides instead, so that the range, and thus the random number rolled, will always be right for the number of sides. So val random number equals 1 to sides. Oh, okay. All right. So it's 1 up until however many sides there are. In the main function below, after printing the dice roll, change sides of my first dice to be set to 20. Um, Copy and paste the existing print statement below after where you change the number of sides. Replace the printing of dice roll with the printing of the result of calling roll method on my first dice. So my first dice sides, my first dice dot roll. It's the same thing. Yeah, works. Works either way. Run your program and you see a message for the 6-sided dice and a second message for the 20-sided dice. And we do. Customize your dice. The idea of a class is to represent a thing, often something physical in the real world. In this case, a dice class does represent the physical dice in the real world. Dice cannot change their number of sides. If you want a different number of sides, you need to get a different dice. Programmatically, this means that instead of changing the sides property of existing dice object instance, you should create a new dice object instance with the number of sides you need. Okay. In this task, you are going to modify the dice class so that you can specify the number of sides when you create a new instance. Change the dice class definition so that you can supply the number of sides. This is similar to how a function can accept arguments for input. Modify the dice class definition to accept an integer called numSides. The code inside your class does not change. Code inside does not change, just giving it an int of numSides. So we're going to be passing in the number of sides into the dice class. Of type int. Okay. And now we're going to create a val my second dice equals dice. All right. And replace this with this, basically. Paste. I can get rid of this one altogether. I don't need dice roll, I don't think, but we're going to pass in 20. It's going to be my second dice roll. Get rid of this. I'm not going to redo that. And then number of sides is going to be equal to num sides. We're going to pass in 6 the first time. See if that works. Yeah, your 6-sided dice. Rolled a 1. Your 6-sided dice rolled a 15. Something's not right. A dice roll. Okay. 20. All right, let's see what it says. Inside the dice class, delete the sides variable, as you can now use numSides. Okay, so just delete the sides variable altogether and use numSides. That should fix it. All right. All right, let's see what else it says. If you run this code, you will see a lot of errors because you need to update the main to work with the changes in dice class. In the main, create my first dice with 6 sides. I did that. Must now supply the number of sides as an argument to dice in the brackets. Okay. In the print statement, change sides to num sides. Okay. Your main function should look like the code below. If you run it, there should be no errors. Dice roll equals my first dice roll. All right, and for the first one, we're still using dice roll. Let's just delete the second print statement for now. Dice roll. Val dice roll. My first dice. My first dice. Val dice roll equals my first dice dot roll. Okay. Expression dice roll of type int cannot be invoked as a function. Oh, so expression cannot be a selector. Okay. Your my first dice dot size. The expression cannot be a selector. Occur after a dot. Oh, what's this? Something that's probably what's messing everything up. Yeah. Your six-sided dice rolled a three. All right. I just had some extra code there. All right. After printing the first dice, add code to create and print a second dice object called mySecondDice with 20 sides. Add a print statement that rolls and returns the value. MySecondDice.numSide, MySecondDice.roll. Okay. No, I put it in brackets. Bracket here. Gotcha. All right, finally. Your six-sided dice rolled a 1. Your 20-sided dice rolled a 20. Let's try it again. Six-sided dice rolled a 2. Your 20-sided dice rolled a 9. All right, good. Your finished main function should look like this. And it does. Except I put my second dice up here. Alright. Class dice. Run your finished program and your output should look like this. Adopt good coding practices. When writing code, concise is better. You can get rid of random number, variable, and return the random number directly. Change the return statement to return the random number directly. Return that expression. Alright. So we should just say this is what we want to return. Alright. So instead of making this whole random number variable, we should just say delete. And we should just say return. Does it still work? Yeah. Alright. In the second print statement, you put the call to get the random number into a string. You can get rid of the dice roll variable by doing the same in the first print statement. My first dice dot roll. Yeah. So instead of dice roll, my first dice dot roll. Does it still work? Yes. And then we can get rid of dice roll. So that looks much better. Yep. All right. Run your code, and there should be no difference in the output. This is your final code after refactoring it, making it nicer. Solution code. Yep. Summary. Call the random function on an int range to generate a random number between 1 and 6. Classes are like blueprints of objects. They can have properties and behavior implemented as variables and functions. An instance of a class represents an object, often physical objects, such as dice. You can call the actions on the object and change its attributes. You can supply values to a class when creating an instance. For example, class dice, val num sides, int, and then create an instance with dice. All right. Functions can return something. Specifically, the data can be returned in the function and use a return statement in the function body to return something. For example, fun example of type int. All right, so we're returning the type of the int in this case, return 5. So we're returning 5 back to the main to be used when somebody calls the function example. Next. All right, if you want to learn more, these are the things we talked about in this lesson. All right, practice on your own. All right, practices are optional, but they provide an opportunity for you to practice what you've learned in this code lab. Do the following. Give your dice class another attribute of color and create multiple instances of dice with different number of sides and colors. Create a coin class that gives it the ability to flip. Create an instance of the class and flip some coins. How would you use the random function with a range to accomplish the coin flip? All right, so let's do the first one first. Give your dice class another attribute of color and create multiple instances of dice with different numbers of sides and colors. Okay. So we could just pass in another argument here. So we'll call it val color of dice. All right. Of type string. All right. And so that's something we've got to pass into the dice class. So pass in red, and we'll pass in blue. All right. And then can we return more than one thing? Return. Or do we? All right. Do we even have to pass it? Let me see. Give your dice class another attribute of color and create multiple instances of dice with different numbers of sides and colors. Mm-hmm. Return color of dice. I don't know. Let's see if it lets me. So basically, I should just be able to say my first dice dot color of dice. All right. So your dice has a color of okay. And rolled A. All right, let's see if this works. No, type mismatch. Inferred type is string, but int was expected. Oh, I gotta tell it what it's giving back. So it's giving, oh, put a colon. It's giving back an int, and it's giving back a string. Type has a constructor, and this must be initialized here. Type is final. So it wants us to give dice class another attribute of color and create multiple instances of dice with different numbers of sides and colors. Hmm. Oh, we should create maybe a different function. Might be better. Don't try to return it from the same thing. Color. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it has nothing to do with this. We're returning it from the function. Okay, so different color. We're going to return a string. Right. Turn color of dice. Okay, should work. All right, and then this should be color. Should just be color. Yeah, cool. All right, so that works. Your six-sided dice has a color of red and roll a 6. All right, and then gotta go. All right, as a color of my second dice dot color. All right, see if that works. Rolled a whatever. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah. Your six-sided dice has a color of red and rolled a 2, and your 20-sided dice has a color of blue and rolled a 13. Could make it cooler. We could give it an array of different colors and then have it return a random color from the array. But that's, I think, past the scope of what I'm doing here. But if that's what I was going to do instead of passing it in like that, I probably would do that. It would be neat. But all right, so that's good for now. And then what was the other one? Create a coin class and give it the ability to flip. Create an instance of the class and flip some coins. How would you use random function with a range? How would you use random function with a range to accomplish this coin flip? All right. So I would create a new class, and it's going to be called class coin. All right. And in this class, I would have var heads equals 1, var tails equals 2, and I'll do a function flip. All right. And it will return I want to return a string. Okay. Might not have to define the variables there. And I could say if first we gotta do the all right. So we'll have 1 to 2. All right, and we'll call random on that. So we'll make a variable called here. We're gonna just take that out. So we'll do var flip result equals okay. And then we'll say if flip result is equal to 1, return heads. You flipped heads. Else return you flipped tails. Let's see if this works. And then in the main, I'm just gonna call. I gotta create an instance of coin, an object, and then I gotta call flip on that instance. Okay, so create val my first coin equals, let's see, coin. So create an instance of coin. We don't have to give it, we're not giving it anything. All right. And then we can just make a print statement down below. Print line. And we can say the, what did I say down here? I said he flipped heads. When flipping the coin, my first coin dot flip. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, unresolved reference, flipped result. I guess I could just do this up here. All right. Let's see if that helps. Resolve restraints, flip result. Flip result. And I'm going to pass in so I'll just make it to equal to 1 first. Then I'll do this down here. Flip results. Oh. Passing in. Oh, I could pass it. I can create it there. That's what I'll do. I shouldn't need to say that again. No passed in parameter. Hmm. No value passed in for val. I don't think I can do this here. Hung. Val flip results of type int. And then, yeah. Okay, so we'll give it a value. We'll just give it 1 to start. And then flip. Flip result. See if that works. Val cannot be reassigned. So we'll call it var. Unresolved reference. Um, I think that's how I would do it. I just don't know how to reference it correctly, I guess. Coin class var flip result of type int. And I'm just gonna assume it's heads. So my first coin, and I'm passing in 1. Unresolved reference. Hmm. Okay. Oh, I could do different when the results 1. Two. See if that works. Resolve reference. Still has the same problem. Well, I'm gonna come back to that. For this video, I'm gonna stop there. So we got through the dice in the playground, but we didn't get through the extra credit stuff, which was the coin class. So I'm gonna look more into that and make another short video after this, because that's got me stumped right now. And I'll post that in another video. All right, I'll see you guys in a bit.